Hello, this is Jackie B. Peterson. I'm your host today on Solo Pro Radio, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here and be talking with you today. It's spring. Spring is here, and I'm happy to see it. So I am the author of Better, Smarter, Richer, 7 Business Principles for Solos, Encore, and Creative Entrepreneurs. And what I'm doing in that is working with you to explain to you solos and encores about the business model of solopreneurship and how solopreneurship is distinctly different from traditional businesses and that there are some things you just must do in order to be financially successful in your solo business. So take a look at my website, and you can download my free ebook about the 7 principles of solopreneurship. You can buy the workbook, Better, Smarter, Richer. I'd love it if you did that. You can also join our conversation on the blog, sign up for our newsletter. Lots of stuff going on the Better, Smarter, Richer website. So I hope that you will tune in. I want to tell you about some coming up events on April 15th in the morning at the Life by Design Northwest at the Portland Community College Climb Center. I'm going to be doing a presentation for a group of job seekers. It's going to be called Is Entrepreneurship for You? That is still available. I think there's still some seats available at that if you go to the Life by Design Northwest website. On April 16th, I am doing a free symposium at the Portland Community College Climb Center Auditorium. That's going to be from 6 to 9 p.m. on the 7 principles of solopreneurship. And on both April 22nd and April 24th, I will be doing my presentation as Entrepreneurship for You at a program that is being put on jointly with Business Administration, AARP, and the Portland Community College. On April 22nd, we will be at the Willow Creek Center in Beaverton, and on April 24th, we will be at the WorkSource Center on 42nd in Killingsworth. All of those events are open to you, and they're on my calendar, which is on the Better, Smarter, Richer website. So hopefully you'll be able to make one of those, and all of them are free. Hard to beat that price, and we would love to see you. We would love to see you solopreneurs. So today on our program, I am very fortunate to have a guest. Her name is Barbara Deurwaarder, and she is from Deur Counsel. She specializes in, as she calls it, opening the door, since her name Deurwaarder originally means door. She opens the door to experience legal advice in incapacity and estate planning. She loves the experience of providing her clients with new avenues and vistas by demystifying the legal process. Boy, is that a talent. Barbara attended the University of Seattle in Washington and initially settled down to practice as a litigator in Vancouver, Washington. Later, she focused her practice on estate planning, incapacity planning, and business law. Now, as a solopreneur, Barbara focuses on providing clients with legal assistance prior to hiring their attorney. She acts as a counselor to help people understand the legal process, what questions to ask, and things to think about when planning for incapacity during life and for distribution of assets after death. Barbara is indeed a pioneer in her latest work. Hello, Barbara.
Well, hi, Jackie. Thank you so much for inviting me to come here this morning. I'm thrilled, and of course, told all my friends and professional colleagues.
Well, as you know, Barbara, we're moving our focus on this radio show this year from strictly solopreneurship to be talking more about to encores, because they're such a huge audience of people 50 plus. You know, there's 100 million of them in the country. Woo! And many of them have not done their work in estate planning, as you know, as an attorney. So you're just a perfect person to be talking today, and because you know a lot about this subject, and you know a lot about the what I call the convoluted intricacies of doing estate planning, which actually I think keeps a lot of people from ever beginning. So you have found a path to help people through that doorway kind of with a lot of ease, I would say. So, yeah. So before we go too far talking about what you're doing today, why don't you tell us your story? Like, Where'd you go to school? Where'd you grow up? What was your career before Deur Counsel?
Well, I was born in Grand Haven, Michigan, and when I was only 2, my family moved to California, down to El Segundo, because my dad got a job down there. And I think I was barely 2, and when I first saw water, I'd never seen, I was like, the Great Lakes is up there, but when I'd never really seen an ocean, and as soon as I saw the water, I said, Wung, W, like O or U-N-G, Wung, and my family never let me forget that one. So we met, we were in California for about 10 years. So when I was about 12, we moved up to Oregon, and then I ended up actually starting over Portland for actually Vancouver first, and then Portland, and then high school and stuff like that. But then I went off to England and lived there for 8 years, and actually sang in a band and worked in film post-production. And so I had no idea I'd be doing this kind of work or even being a lawyer. And when I came back, I kind of couldn't figure it out. But finally I went back to school, and law was the place I ended up at. Law school, undergraduate at PSU, Portland State University, and then I went to University of Washington where I graduated from undergraduate, and then, of course, law school, now called Seattle University School of Law. And then I got a tax degree from Portland State. So it's like, wow, that's a lot of degrees. I feel like I'm overeducated now.
Oh, I don't think so.
But it's an interesting background, and and I'm not sure where I'm at now is a little different place than I was at when I first got out, because sometimes you just don't know, and you kind of try different things out in the legal profession.
Well, that's for sure. The legal profession is a great, big, huge, humongous practice, and you can choose to practice in multiple different ways. And so have you always, after you graduated and had these wonderful degrees, did you practice law then?
Well, I did. Right after law school, I was in Vancouver, Washington, and we were in a recession, but not as bad as the one we just had, and it was hard to find jobs in Seattle. So I ended up going down to Vancouver where my family lived, and I got a job doing family law, which is divorce work, and maternity work, adoption work, and I did also felony criminal defense. So I was in litigation pretty much the first few years of my practice, and I practiced over there for about 5.5 years before I moved over.
Criminal defense. Woo!
Yeah, I know. But you know what? The clients are grateful. That's the good part. Divorce isn't always like that.
I am sure that that's true, that in divorce they're not always grateful, but criminal defense. So we could in those years have expected to see you on TV with some of the big cases going on. Is that what you were doing?
No. Actually, the big cases are normally handled by the more seasoned attorneys, and I was new. And so I was on a criminal contract, but most of the work I did was in court, but not trial work, mostly what they call motions practice. So I did a lot of that. I was in court like 5 days a week. It's really trial by fire. And I had good law firms I worked for, and it really gave you a good grounding in litigation, which is really good if you're doing a non-litigation type of a legal profession. It's good to understand what litigation is all about. So a lot of people start out doing that and then eventually end up in more of what the legal career calls a transactional practice. So you're more like in the office or something of that nature. You're not going into court all the time. So it's a different kind of practice. But it does help you to understand what it's like and the deadlines and the intense research that you have to do sometimes, especially if something's a little different. And then you have clients. It's not just dealing with other clients when you're in litigation. It's dealing with the other attorney as well. Actually, the other client you don't deal with. Generally, you deal with the other attorney, and depending on the attorney that you got, sometimes the fees for both parties would be very high because the attorney has that real fighting mentality, and they're something they can get for their client, they're going to go for it, and so sometimes there's a lot of money spent on divorce work. So yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. What an interesting background. So from there, what led you to have an interest in estate and incapacity planning, as opposed to some of the other things that you were doing?
Well, I really did. I got to the point where I didn't like doing divorce work anymore because it was just nasty.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, I would wake up in the middle of the night thinking I had a case to plan for, and I realized I just made it up in my head.
Oh, wow.
And it's, you know, there's a lot of anxiety out there when you're in the legal profession. So anyway, so I got a tax degree from Portland State, and I was thinking I wanted a transactional office practice, but I couldn't really find anywhere in Vancouver to do it. And even to this day, there is nowhere I could go. There just aren't very many firms doing it. Majority are in Portland, Oregon. So I ended up, you know, looking around. I was doing contract work for several years, working for other lawyers, doing some piece work that they needed to have done. And then I finally found a really nice law firm in Beaverton, and I settled in there for about 6.5 years. And so I was there for a while. That's where I really learned estate planning and incapacity planning. I did conservatorships and guardianships and probates, a little bit of trust administration. I did business law, so I would start up businesses, and you did startup documents and some other shareholder agreement type things. And then I also did some trademark applications. So that was where I did a lot of my work, and I did a lot of presentation work. I did estate planning seminars all the time, not all the time, but twice a month, in front of groups. And so you learn how to field questions. It's a little bit of an art to field questions. They all of a sudden something would come out of the blue, and, you know, it's like, I don't know the answer to that one.
Yeah.
So usually you know the answers, but, you know, they're pretty standard things. And then, of course, you don't really want to give legal advice to people in a general setting like that. You know, it's all confidential, so you really want to be talking to people, you know, in a confidential situation. But it was a great training ground for me. I had a lot of experience doing all of these things, doing conservatorships. Now, and for people on the radio, the conservatorship is when you are incapacitated and you have no plan in place for someone to manage your finances should you become incapacitated and you can't manage them yourself. So without a plan in place, what you end up getting is someone has to go to court on your behalf, and they have to ask for the court to supervise basically this financial plan for you for the rest of your life. And the conservator has to get a bond, which has to be paid every year. And it's very, you know, they have to prove you're incapacitated, so they need people witness statements. They need to show that you can't take care of yourself or you're a danger to yourself and others. On the flip side, the guardianship is for basically determines where you live and what kind of medical treatment you get, that kind of thing. So that's a different one. I call one the medical and one the financial. The medical is a little bit broader than that, but it covers everything. And but even today,
so which is the medical and which is the
financial?
Yeah,
the financial is the conservatorship.
I see.
And the medical is the guardianship. Every state's got a different kind of name, but that's how they call it here in Oregon.
I see. Oh, that's very interesting, because these things do happen, don't they?
Well, with more and more people, we have a huge baby boomer generation. More and more of them are going to require some kind of care like this as they get older. And so there's going to be a really, you know, if you don't have a plan in place, the courts are going to be flooded with these cases. Less so the guardianship because of some law changes, but more so the conservatorships. It's just going to be really, really, really difficult. And without plans, people, you know, families are going to be facing the expense, the cost of setting these up is expensive, and you have to pay every year for the reports from the conservatorship, the financial one, to be made to the court. And every year
Barbara, when you say a plan, is a plan something that you would work into your will, or would it be something in addition to your will?
Excuse me. My allergies. Well, a plan is, you know, we can go into all kinds of stuff on estate planning, but there's two types of plans that you can have. One is a will plan, which is governed by your will. The other one's a living trust plan, which is governed by your living trust.
Okay.
And it can be much more complicated than that, but essentially that's kind of in a simple way. Those are the two types of plans people can have. Or the third one is they have no plan, which means that the state writes their will for them. And so there's a statute out there. It's called the intestate statute, and it basically lays out what happens to your estate if you die without a will or a trust.
Yeah. Okay.
Good stuff. Yeah, and it changes all the time. You know, there's areas of law that are pretty pretty standard, but estate planning is always changing. And a lot of things to consider with estate planning. Some of it is where do my assets go? Another part is the tax part. Like what if I have to pay taxes to the state of Oregon? That's another thing to plan for.
Right.
And so there's all kinds of things to plan for, and that's kind of how I help people to understand these. It is complicated, but to understand how it works is really helpful for people, as they go in to see their lawyer to get their plans done. So, but if you don't, but there's always a plan for people. Remember, always a plan. It's just, is it going to be written for you, or is it the state going to write it for you? And is it going to be a will or a trust, again, or the state writes it for you?
You say that so clearly, either you're going to write it or the state's going to write it, that I think that's a great way for you to market your services. I can help you get ready to write your own plan, because if you don't have one, the state's going to write one. Although, I do have a client that says the biggest secret in America is that we're going to die. And so there's a lot of denial about this. Yeah.
I did a presentation once on why people aren't planning, and one of the reasons was I'm not going to die, or I'm not going to die anytime soon, which of course we know. You never know when that's going to happen. So it'll happen when it happens. And, either you got something, and I've talked to people that have plans in place because something happened in, like, their parents. It was a nightmare, so they made sure they got one done. But, not everybody has that nightmare situation before. So, and maybe they're going to be seeing it soon as the people in their 80s start to age and whatnot. So yeah, probably.
So you've already talked about this. Are you seeing the effects of more and more people living longer? This longevity bonus that we have, and that there's a bigger drive for estate planning, or are you just seeing more people in denial and not doing anything?
Well, I read an article the other day about baby boomers not doing estate planning. I thought, wow, that was like, what a, because then they leave it to their kids to clean up the mess. And not just the mess from when they pass away, but the mess if they had a stroke or they had a heart attack or a car accident or something. Mm-hmm. And someone else has to come in and, they're kind of putting their head in the sand. So, denial is not very helpful. And underneath it all, that they know they need to do it. It's just that they put it off. And, you can't put it off forever. And then the other part of this is, Jackie, that consider this. There are people that did plans like when the kids were little. And now the kids are up in age and they've got their own kids. And these older folk, not older necessarily, but they could be in their 60s or something. 60's not old anymore. But they need to replan. So a lot of people need to replan. Or they moved from Arizona up here to be back with their families because they moved up here. They need to replan. Every state has different rules and laws in the estate planning area.
Oh, my goodness.
It's very important when you move to a new state, if you think you're going to stay there, to see an attorney or see someone like me to help explain it to you before you see them so you kind of understand, wow, this is the way it is in Oregon, because we're right next to a state that's a community property state, Washington State. And now Oregon, of course, is what they call a common law state. So most of the states in the United States are like Oregon. They're what they call common law states. And this has to do with divorce, and it has to do with when people pass away. Those laws are very important for the attorneys to know about them, too.
So could you, I love your idea that you have developed, and I don't know if you've got other people in the same career path that you're on where you are considering yourself a navigator and working as a counselor for clients before they work with their attorney. What need have you been seeing, that has brought you to work in that particular niche, Barbara? Because I think it's a tremendous idea. And, are you working with people to get over their fear or to get educated before they work with their attorney, which is very expensive, or, use those hours better when they're with the attorney? I mean, what did you see that was a need that you're filling with your counseling?
Well, I just remember my prior job before. I forgot to mention this when we were looking at my background. Looking at my background was I did actually work for 5 years for the American Red Cross,
Uh-huh.
I was a gift planning officer. And what I would do is visit donors in their homes, and I'd get to talk to them about their estate planning. And, over and over, what I found was that people were not understanding it. They weren't understanding what it was, what constitutes a plan. A lot of them were afraid to go to lawyers' offices because, you get into this office and it's all like hardwood, rosewood desk or something. And then the lawyer would tell them things and they wouldn't understand them. Or they would get a plan and they would walk out and they wouldn't know what they got. And it's like, that isn't very helpful for people to walk out and not know what it is that they have. So this is what kind of got me into, I was looking at a way to help people with estate planning in a more compassionate way. Because I don't meet them in an office like my office, right? I don't have one. I meet them where they're at. I meet them at their home or their workplace. That way, it's on their turf, and it's more friendly, it's more compassionate. We can be over the kitchen table talking about this. And so that way, they don't feel like they're pressured into a certain type of plan. And if they do pick a plan, they'll have more idea, if they see me first, why that plan would be good for them. A lot of them, it's legalese, they don't understand it. And what I try to do is talk about it as much as I can in plain English so they understand, oh, okay, that's what we're talking about. And then I give them an advice letter at the end. So they get an advice letter that goes through everything we talked about. So they may have forgotten some of the things, but it's in a letter. So now I kind of can go through this and review it before I see my attorney. So they have a product, a service that they can feel comfortable with. And there's a lot of people that just aren't comfortable with going to a lawyer's office. You go downtown Portland, the hourly fee for lawyers is $3.50 an hour, and I have a flat fee, and it's much less than that. And so people know what to expect. They don't go in there thinking something else. They're going to add this extra bill on their bill because you made a phone call to them or something, which is always a big fear. Because in a lawyer, 0.1 of an hour is the minimum amount when someone phones you. That's the minimum amount the attorney. And then they're going to charge probably 0.2 because they now have to make a memo to the file. And if it's a longer phone call or they had to do something else, it could be 0.3 of an hour. So, and you have to think about that when you're calling an attorney. So with me, they can come in with the simplest questions at all of it. I mean, the basic questions, because I can be going through, everybody's going to have a different level. And it's not like I'm a teacher in front of a classroom with 30 students. What I am doing is I'm talking to you about your situation, your specific situation, not your neighbor's. And so, it's like some people said, well, I'm going to go, my neighbor saw this attorney, I'm going to go see that attorney. Well, that may not be the attorney for you. And so everybody, I try to be looking at that aspect as well.
Well, what I like about it, is that you give people an advice letter and you explain to them the jargon or the terminology that's going to get used and what it means and how to ask the questions to get what they want. Because I think that happens a lot, and I'm just calling on my past days as a CPA and an accounting professional. I know that people would come in and say, for instance, I want to be a subchapter S corporation, or I want to, form a corporate business, and they would ask you to do something for them, and what you really wanted to know is what they were trying to achieve. And because the solution that they came up with, where they would ask for something technical, might or might not be the best solution for what they were trying to make happen, but they had been doing a lot of, barbershop talk and, kind of getting advice from friends and colleagues instead of understanding the specific terminology of what was going on for them. And, I just felt that people could understand how to ask for what they wanted to have happen rather than ask for the solution to the problem. I could serve them better. And I think you're doing that same sort of thing. You're helping people learn how to ask for what they want to have happen instead of saying, going to their attorney, I want to create a trust. They can say to their attorney, I understand that this is what a trust does, and I think this is maybe what I want to use. And, you come in better educated. You can ask better questions. I mean, is that what you're helping people do?
Yeah, and, one of the things I do with people is look at because I go through an initial meeting. I do a free, here in Oregon, I do a complimentary meeting for people for about an hour, and we decide whether I can help them. And then if they decide I can help them, then I go through an intake process, which I basically sit with my yellow pad and just take a lot of notes. And, you want to know what kind of assets they have, what their family dynamics are, what their health looks like, what their goals are, what questions they have about the legal process, and all that. We get that all out of the way in the first meeting. And depending on how many people are involved in the process, maybe if they're children, they want to bring their children in, that could be another meeting. But the final meeting is where I lay out all what I see as some general alternatives for them. And it may or may not be what the lawyer decides to do in the end, but it will give them, open their minds up. And typically there are certain standard things you do in every estate plan. So like why you would want a will or trust is pretty basic. But there's also things in there like how to provide for children, how to provide for my own incapacity, how to plan for tax issues, And I talk about all. I'm not really going to give a lot of tax advice because that is not where I want to go with this, because this is more of it's a kind of a general to specific type of advice. But the one thing that I really recommend to people never to do is to go online and buy a form online and do your own estate plan. It's like being your own surgeon. It's just not a good idea because there's so many attorneys that make money. They make money when people do online estate plans. Because
I can't even imagine doing that. Is there a lot of that goes on?
There is a lot of there's several companies that offer that service. And, and if it was me, I could do it because I've done them. But if it was someone who has no idea what paragraph 10, how that relates to paragraph 1, I did a probate of one guy's will one time, and he was an engineer. He did his own will. He gave away 200% of his estate.
Oh, my goodness.
Just saying, that's the kind of thing people don't understand, and they want to save money, but they end up spending many more times the amount that it costs to do it, to get it cleaned up. Get it cleaned up, not by them, but by their estate when they pass, and whoever has to handle it after they pass away. So, and here's another thing, one of the things to think about, I said earlier that the estate writes your will for you. Well, if you have no will, you have no trust, you pass away, you have no heirs, then all that money goes to the state. It'll go to the state. There's a division that handles just these assets. Wow. So that's another thing to consider. If you're single and you have no heirs, you pass away, it's good to have a plan in place. You can leave your assets to your friends, to a charity. I mean, I have a charitable gift background. One of the things I talk to people about, what are some charitable giving opportunities in my estate plan? Because some people don't want to give their money away right now. I need to live on. But after you pass away, you could. There might be many reasons why you give it away when you pass away. It might be tax reasons. So, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of angles to this. And
there are. It's very complex. It's very complex, and I think the service that you're providing of helping people navigate this is absolutely fantastic. So, who do you think would be a good candidate for your service?
Well, I would say, it could be anyone, really. It could be young people that don't have any plan in place and they have small children. But generally it might be people that are over 50 that, need to replan or plan for the first time. They may have tax issues because they're getting closer to the time where incapacity can happen. And that's where it's really important to have a plan in place, especially for incapacity, because they could live another 30 years or more. But what if 10 or 15 years of those time, something happens, they get Parkinson's or something, and somebody needs to handle their estate. So that's why, even if you don't have a lot of money, it's even more important to have a plan in place because that money could go to court costs rather than having a family member manage your money for you. It's much less expensive that way. And so, there's sometimes you can't avoid court if there's some family dispute. Sometimes you can't. But getting back to, you had mentioned the word navigator a couple of times, and so that is what I call myself. I didn't say that at the beginning, but I call myself an estate planning navigator. That's my moniker or whatever. That's my thing.
Your unique value proposition.
My unique is I'm a navigator helping people at the initial stages of estate planning or replanning. I just came up with that word replan the other week, so I thought that was a good word. But, there's people like that. Could be single people over 50, could be married couples, could be someone who just lost a spouse and needs to replan, or they may just got married, or they now have grandkids that they want to provide for and they don't know what to do, so they need to replan. There's a lot of reasons why people would need my service, but I would say people over 50 are more likely to need to do something because they now see, I'm at this age, I need to start planning. Not at 50, but I'm saying over 50. So,
I think it's so interesting that you talk about the estate, but you also talk about incapacity planning. I would say if we, let our thoughts drift somewhere, it certainly might go and say, okay, it's a given that I'm going to die, and I really need to do estate planning for that reason. But I would think the one thing that people really don't think to plan for is to being incapacitated.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's attorneys that just do incapacity work, and they just do conservatorships and guardianships. Some of them do Medicaid planning if the client does not have a lot of assets but has some. I did a little bit of that, but, it's not an area I really wanted to focus on, but there are attorneys that do that. I was fortunate that I was at a firm where I did get exposure to doing estate planning with tax work in there. I was also doing incapacity work like conservatorships and guardianships. So, but you know what? If you have the proper plan in place, you can avoid the conservatorship.
Okay.
And hopefully the guardianship. Hopefully you can avoid both. Of course, if there's family disputes, sometimes you can't avoid it. But usually the family disputes are caused because of no planning. So the more that you have plans in place, the easier it is on the family to not have a dispute. And sometimes they're unavoidable, but you can kind of fizzle that little problem out much easier with having a plan in place rather than have uncertainty out there. And when there's uncertainty, then people will, I love that one Powerball sign it says on the freeway going, it says your long lost relatives are waiting. if you get the Powerball, your long lost relatives are waiting, back in line, so that's what happens. People, come out of the woodwork when someone passes away. If you don't have a plan in place, it could cause a lot of friction. So that's why it's good to plan. And it's just incapacity is a huge issue. Huge issue is we're living longer and there are more diseases that seem to be happening because the longer we live, something will happen, Some people, like my dad is 99. He's fortunate to still be very mentally capable. But a lot of people by that age, they're, who knows? They're in nursing homes or memory care, that kind of thing. So it's likely something's going to happen. And, why not make it easy for your family?
Yeah.
Really,
I wrote down that sentence you said about usually family disputes are caused by the lack of a plan. Everybody's going to get in. You don't have a plan, so everybody's going to come in and do it their way.
Yeah.
And, certainly what I've noticed is that old grudges come up, old unsettled disputes come up. When you get money involved in a unknown plan of what to do with it, or a family death, all this old baggage comes forward that didn't get settled earlier, and now all of a sudden it's getting settled, and it's going to be very expensive, to.
Oh, it is. It's very expensive. I was talking to an attorney downtown. Well, this had to do with one of those online trusts. I talked to an attorney downtown, and this is quite a while ago, but the attorney, he told me that he was now in court over this trust, and they were like, over $12,000, $13,000 worth of attorney fees just to sort it out, and the family was not fighting.
Oh my goodness! Goodness!
It can
How
be very
terrible.
Expensive. And guardianships can be very expensive too. I mean, and if you think about like a conservatorship, that's the financial management. If you don't have a plan, I mean, those are like a living probate. Every year that you continue to live, there's going to be a probate. That's exactly what it is.
Wow.
So that's why having a good plan in place for your particular situation is really helpful.
Oh, my goodness. It seems like it's pretty important. So what I hear is making a plan can help people preserve their assets to go where they really want them to go rather than paying the courts and the attorneys.
Exactly. Now, again, sometimes you can't help that will come up, but, for most people, it minimizes the cost substantially. It may cost more up front to do the planning, but the money saved is incredible. And it could be that you have tax savings, too, depending on your estate size. So,
wow. So are you giving a lot of talks and networking a lot to get people to know about this?
I am. Actually, I'm doing a lot of networking, a lot of it with financial planners, excuse me, accountants like yourself, also with people that do geriatric care management. I actually was down in Salem last week with an attorney, and she recommended that I talk to this lady who deals with caregivers of elderly people. So I'm meeting her this afternoon. So she does she actually has a for-profit business, and she does these modules for people. So I'm going to be interested to see what maybe we can work together. The other side of this is I'm looking at working with nonprofits to do presentations for their donors and volunteers on estate planning and planned giving. Another word, planned giving is another word for gift planning. But, a lot of these people want to make gifts to their favorite charities, and they don't know how to do it. What I can do is help them understand estate planning as well as how they can leave a gift. So those are part of the ways I'm doing it. I was at a presentation here in Lake Oswego the other day about my business. So I'm getting some presentation work and a lot of networking in organizations that are helpful for me, where I can, because I see myself receiving professional referrals, which, accountants, attorneys. I might do some work for attorneys as well when their clients need some additional help and they don't want to pay the big fees. They can work with me. And, that's another way to do it. And, just referrals and presentations I see as two really important ways for me to get the message out. And, having a good website, I think my website's pretty good. And being on a board of the Southwest Washington State Planning Council is really helpful. So a lot of people over in Vancouver, a lot of people move from Portland to Vancouver because of the tax reasons and for same-sex marriage. So, there's a lot of undiscovered territory over there. But I like Portland a lot, and of course.
Well, especially Barbara, when you said that, if there's a lot of people moving from Oregon to Washington and vice versa, and that the basis of their estate planning is different, common law or community property, that might be something they just don't even think about.
No, they don't.
A big deal.
They don't even think about it. People don't think about it. They move here from New York, they don't even think about it. They move here from Texas, they don't even think about it. So it's just, if I can help get people in that mindset, they're more likely to see a lawyer if they see me first. And then you ask, I think one of the things that I do as part of the service I do is I do refer people to attorneys at the end of the process that I like and trust. I've been a lawyer since 1992. I've been doing estate planning since early 2000, and gift planning. And so I have a lot of knowledge of the lawyers in town, in Portland, both sides of the river, and Lake Oswego, Beaverton, those kind of areas.
Well, you're doing a very important service in addition to the work that you do, which is raising the awareness level. It's very big to do this, and it's hard to do because so many people are in denial, and when they move out of denial, as you've said, it's complex, and they don't even know where to begin. So, you're doing a really big service to all of us, because to have the courts all tied up with people that didn't make plans, costs us all money. And
it does.
Yeah. When all people have to do is sit down and do some planning and thinking about what they really want to have happen. And wow.
Yeah. There's so many people in denial now, Jackie, that it's 70% of Americans don't have a plan.
Oh my goodness.
It could be, some people even say higher. Now, there are people at the bottom level that might not need much, depending on the situation. But there's a bunch of people in the middle that aren't planning. And I talk to some financial advisors, and they tell me that about 50% of their clients don't have a plan.
Oh, my goodness.
And they talk to them every year. They talk to these people every year or more often. They do an annual checkup, and they're saying, we just don't have, they're not doing plans. And so there's a lot of that going on. And if I can help them overcome their resistance to it through a more gentle, compassionate approach and to be a navigator of estate planning, because I don't have an investment in what they decide to do. You know, I'm more of a neutral person, so they can talk to me about all the options, and we can look at why this would be better and explain to them why it would be better. You know, and then they can make the choice, but I'm not choosing for them, so they can make the choice, but I can present to them some alternatives. And and of course, they can go into much more than that. If they have a lot of money, they might need to do more complicated planning. But at least if you can open their minds to planning, and also another thing, make sure that they understand it's going to cost money, and be willing to spend the money to go to see a good attorney to get your plan done, rather than decide to do an online form when you don't know what you're doing and trying to be your own surgeon. It just, you know.
I can much more easily imagine being in denial and doing nothing than I can imagine going online and filling out a form. I mean, you know, I don't know a lot, but I know it's complex, and I just can't imagine, you know, a do-it-yourself estate plan.
Well, you know, there's people that you can do some things by yourself. You look at the world, you know, you can do your own painting, you know, your interior painting. You can do, you know, if you're a guy, of course I can't do this very much, but like your own simple plumbing stuff, like replacing certain, you know, like your faucet or something. Some guys will do that. You know, some of them are good enough to do some more outdoor stuff, more maybe some semi-construction stuff. So a lot of times there's many areas of our lives we can do our own work, you know. We're not professionals, but we can do our own work. We can cut our own lawns. We can probably do our own landscaping if we spend enough time and money on it. There's a lot of things we can do, but there's things when you get to these specialized areas like engineering and architecture and you know, accounting, especially when you get into more complicated stuff. And, you know, and then law work and medicine, they all require people that have specialized knowledge, and there's a reason they went to law school or the school that they went to, and then they have X amount of years of experience. They paid for that, you know, and they went in and invested the effort. And, you know, we can't be an expert at everything. And there's so much available online now for many different things that, you know, people can get kind of almost like, you know, everything, you believe everything on the internet type of thing.
I think it's so interesting, and I agree with you that there's a lot of things people can do themselves, and you know, maybe they can go online and find out the understanding some of the terminology and things that you're talking about, but boy, getting it clear of how that's interpreted in your local area, and you know what the courts do, and you know what cases have come up and places to watch out for, and you know, me as a Better, Smarter, Richer, we so encourage people to do what they are good at themselves and then hire experts to help them in other parts of their lives. And that's exactly what you are living out here. You've got expertise, and, you know, you are offering it to people and saying, oh, my goodness, there's so much to know. And, you know, if you want to preserve your assets for your heirs or your children, your next generation, or even for giving away to charity, you know, you want to, when you leave, you don't want to leave this in the hands of the courts to make decisions for you. You want
the courts won't, and the courts won't give it to charity either. Charity you like, they're not going to do it. And you know, I mentioned earlier you can do some tax planning. Well, just think about in Oregon that the Oregon estate tax is set at assets when you pass away. Of course, we're looking at the surviving spouse, or if you're a single person. If they're in excess of $1 million, there's a estate tax here in Oregon. So, you know, Oregon is, you know, there's a lot more reasons to plan in Oregon. And, you know, what if you're a same-sex couple and you want to, or you're an unmarried couple living together, you want to leave your assets to the other person? Well, it's not going to happen through the state writing your will. It just won't happen. And they won't have any ability to manage your affairs or anything like that unless you put it in writing.
Right.
I mean, properly in writing, not just in writing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Put it down what exactly that you mean. I just think you're doing very important work. So, do you think that there's any change? Are you moving the needle at all? Are more people becoming aware and, you know, maybe taking steps and taking action to take care of themselves and their estate? Are you seeing, you know, any improvement?
I mean, I think what happens, we have so much information around us, and people are multitasking like crazy.
Yes.
And we're so bombarded with things that we need to do. The newest thing on the Internet now, there's this heartbleed thing that's happening, and now they're saying your accounts might be compromised, and people get focused on that. You get focused on something happening, like just recently, we had Philip Seymour Hoffman passed away.
Right.
Well, he only had a will, and I don't believe it was. I didn't look at the whole thing, but I don't think it was very updated. One of the things people need to realize when you do an estate plan, it's not like set in place for the rest of your life. You need to have it reviewed periodically.
Right.
You don't just get a plan when you're 25 and all of a sudden you're 60. It's the same plan. It doesn't work like that. So even 10 years later, I mean, it's what's very important to have someone talk to someone like myself, every so often to see, do I need to really make some changes here? And, what do I need to do? And what do I need to be thinking about before I see my attorney or go see the attorney? And so, those are the kind of things people don't always, they get focused on what's right in front of them, and a lot of people at jobs are doing more jobs than they ever did before. So they're tired when they get home, and they've got kids. It's really hard to get their attention because their attention is so split anymore, so much more than it has been before. So the more people are telling them this, like we hear about Philip Seymour Hoffman, and we hear about James Gandolfini last year. That was kind of a big, estate. It wasn't a super mess, but it was a semi-mess. And people like Heath Ledger wrote his will, and then afterwards his daughter was born, and of course they had to go to court in Australia, which is different rules than we have here. But still, a lot of people like to keep it private. They don't want everybody to know, and then you find out how bad the plans were, people that really did have a lot of money. And that filters down to people that have less money. They don't have plans either. So,
right.
It goes all across the board.
So we've only got a few minutes left. So what is your one piece of advice that you have for those of us who are 50 plus, and maybe those who have not yet begun to think about estate and incapacity or end of life legal planning? What's your one takeaway from all this and your piece of advice?
Well, if it's something you've been putting off, either doing a plan or replanning, take that step. Take that step and get the plan done. Now, with that said, I would be a really good first step for them to see, because they could see me, they can get an evaluation of what their situation is. It's not like a second opinion, not really, but it is a way to start the conversation so that it's much smoother when you see an attorney, especially somebody who, if they don't have anybody, I can refer them to someone who I like and trust. And I think it's invaluable, the service I provide, because what are you going to do about tomorrow? Today is the only time you have to do. Today is the time you got to take the action. It's not about being anxious about it, but it certainly is about, let's just sit down and let's be methodical about it. Get the plan in place. Here's some options for you. Here's a couple of lawyers that you could see who I think would be a good fit for you. And then let's keep in touch. And I even offer a handover meeting. I can be at the lawyer's office and hand it over.
Oh, that's good.
Hand it over. Yeah, I think that would be nice for people. Yeah, because when I work with attorneys, to me they are my partners. They're partners with me. They're not like a separate lawyer. Although they are a separate lawyer, they have a separate relationship with the client. They're a partner with me. I mean, because I'm helping them out, and I'm helping you out. I'm helping you out because you need an estate plan or you need a replan. Things are changing. People's lives change. Children are born. Assets change. They inherit. What do I do now? This is what they need. They need someone to help them navigate this so that they feel more comfortable and they actually get it done. Because so much of this is about procrastination and fear over, like you said, fear that, I'm going to die someday. Gosh, it's going to happen. So let's just help you get over this hurdle so that you can get it done in a gentle and compassionate way.
So, Barbara, not only are you passionate about what you're talking about, but you're right. What a great place to be. And I hope our listeners have been inspired by listening to you and knowing that they've got to get up and get busy, and that if they are procrastinating because of fear of the complexity and fear of not knowing what to do, that they're going to get hold of you. So how about if you tell people, our listeners, how to contact you so that they can get this most important work underway?
Well, I'll give you my contact information. My phone number is 503-451-0080. Again, that's 503-451-0080. They can also go to my website. My website is www. I'm going to spell this out, okay? Deur Counsel, so that's all one word, Deur, Counsel, Counsel, deurcounsel.com. And again, it's Barbara Deurwaarder. I spell that name out, but it's really honking long, and people have a hard time with it.
Well, I think we can remember www.deurcounsel.com. And Barbara, it's just been so interesting talking with you today, and it's inspiring. I hope people are leaping to the phone and saying, I have got to take care of this. This is part of being an elder, and it's part of my elder wisdom, and they're just going to make it happen for themselves. And listeners, I just want to thank you for tuning in with us today. This is your host, Jackie B. Peterson. I'm the author of Better, Smarter, Richer, 7 Business Principles for Encore, Solo, and Creative Entrepreneurs. And my mission, my passion in life is to help solo businesses find financial success. And you can do that by following the principles in Better, Smarter, Richer. It's a fill-in-the-blanks workbook. I hope you'll take a look at it and begin doing the work and look at your own thinking and what is holding you back from finding the financial success you are looking for in your solo venture. And I hope also that you will tune in with us again next week. It's been a great conversation. Barbara, I want to thank you again, and we'll talk to you. We'll be on the radio again next week. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.